Good afternoon. Hey, there you are. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Deb. How are you?
I'm great. So for viewers out there just joining us, my name's Debra Giordano, Vice President of Service Delivery for Equus Workforce Solutions, and you are watching live at the forum. And joining me for this segment is Jesse McCree. Jesse, delighted to have you here today.
Thanks, Deb. Great to be here. And I'm sorry if my shirt blends in a little bit with the background, but I trust you can all see and hear me okay. So.
It works great. I hope the drive was not difficult, right? At least
the commute was easy. I'll say that.
That's right. That's right. So let me tell you all just a little bit about Jesse. And Jesse, I learned a little tidbit about you that wasn't in the bio I received, but Jesse is the CEO of South Central PA Works, SCPa Works, which is the Regional Workforce Development Board, with a mission to unlock the human talent that drives the development of businesses and individuals, creating opportunity for growth and prosperity for the South Central Pennsylvania region. Under Jesse's leadership, SCPa Works invests in, evaluates, and advances high-impact workforce development programs, training centers, and policies that drive our regional economic growth by connecting the needs of businesses and job seekers. Jesse has over 12 years of experience in nonprofit management, public policy, and workforce development. You serve on numerous boards and community and national organizations, such as the Coalition on Adult Basic Education and the U.S. Conference of Mayors Workforce Development Council. And Jesse, I know that you have an impressive education, and one of the things that caught my eye was that you have an MPA out of Cornell University, which is my hometown.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is my hometown. I wasn't blessed to attend Cornell University, but I was a workforce board director for several years in that region and worked very, very closely with Cornell University Office of Economic Development and their R&D arms and doing transfer technology and all kinds of cool stuff. So when I saw that on your resume, so you spent a little time in Ithaca then, huh?
I did, yeah. We called Ithaca home for a couple years, and we loved our time up there. The Finger Lakes region was great. We did kayaking and hiking, explored all the falls. It was great. And Cornell was a great program, and I was really, really grateful to be a part of that. So glad to know someone else from Ithaca in that wonderful area.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang out in some of my old stomping grounds. I'm sure we could. We'll have to do some reminiscing when we next connect. So first of all, just also want to let you know I had the great honor this morning of being part of the Equus Workforce Solutions welcome call to our brand new team at South Central PA. So Jesse, thank you for the opportunity. For our viewers, Jesse's region recently embarked on a procurement, and we submitted a proposal and were awarded the one-stop operator contract there, which officially, I believe today is the official day of when it started. And so my relationship with you is pretty new, but we are so delighted to be part of your region in this capacity. So let's talk about your region a little. Start us out, Jesse, and feel free to expand upon your background personally as well, too. But I'd also just love for you to share with folks, give them a picture, a snapshot of the South Central region, its strengths, its opportunities for growth, whatever you'd like to share about the area.
Absolutely, yeah. So South Central Pennsylvania, that I've called home for about 10 years or so. And it really is starting to feel like home, which is a really great thing for us to raise our family here. It's about 8 counties that we serve. Harrisburg and York are 2 of the biggest cities in the 8-county region. It's a labor force of about 750,000. And as Deb, you're learning in the beginning of this partnership here with South Central PA Works, is that we have a wonderful area, a thriving economy, and certainly a lot of complexities that go along with both a rural and an urban format, as well as suburban. So we have a very diverse set of sectors and industries that really sort of drive a lot of growth for South Central Pennsylvania. That includes advanced manufacturing and healthcare, logistics and transportation, as well as a growing information technology sector as well. And I think the biggest thing about our area that I think is really unique is that sometimes, and this is one of the opportunities that I think we have for growth in our region, is that to some degree, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have maybe a little bit more of sort of an iconic identity, when you're driving into Philly or into Pittsburgh. And for South Central Pennsylvania, we have a lot of small to mid-sized towns and boroughs. And it's really sort of codifying a regional workforce strategy that I think has been driving a lot of our work at South Central PA Works. Because what's going on in one county and what's going on in another county a lot of times is very aligned. And so a lot of our job as a workforce board, as I'm sure you're aware, Deb, is really acting as a convener, bringing the right partners together and having the conversations about how do we do this on a regional perspective and not just on individual counties at a time. So it's been a great region to be a part of. And this is my 4th year in this role here. So it's been lots of learning and lots of growth here at South Central PA Works.
I know you're like considered new blood in this industry, right? Some of us have been around a while, and it's an interesting time to be still relatively new to this industry because we are going through really a tectonic shift. I mean, I think we all wanted a big shift to happen, but now it's thrust upon us. So let's talk about how workforce development is shifting. And so I'd just love your perspective on that as someone who's now not jaded or what do I want to say, not buried in the old ways of doing things, but been around long enough to understand how it works and how it could work. And then you layer that on top of current events. And just, how do you see this moving forward? What's especially your focus on service delivery, technology, and so forth?
So it's a great question, and it's a big question, and it's probably top of mind for all of my counterparts across the country, and I'm sure all of your counterparts as well. And I think what we like to do at South Central PA Works, particularly in the last 3 months, is, it sounds funny, but not focus so much on what has changed or what is changing, but rather focus on what we know won't change. And this is sort of an interesting perspective. So do we believe that workforce development needs to actively engage local businesses? Absolutely, and that hasn't changed. Do we need to use labor market data to drive decisions? Absolutely, that won't change either. Do we need to connect people to careers and be a convener to integrate education and training with business demand? Absolutely, and that hasn't changed. As much has been shifted and overturned in the past 3 months, a lot of these things really haven't changed and they won't change. So our theory is, what do we know in a time of great uncertainty? What will stay the same 5 to 10 years from now? And I think for us as an organization, we need to double down, so to speak, on engaging local businesses, integrating education and training programs into what the in-demand occupations are, tapping innovative funding sources. We are grateful for the federal and the state resources that we get, but as workforce boards, we can do more if we have those funding sources that allow us to do a little bit more. So in light of all that, I think what is changing, as you mentioned, is the service delivery mechanisms. We potentially and probably should be thinking about shifting from bricks and mortar to more sort of tech platforms that allow us to reach more job seekers and businesses in a scalable way at a cost that's very efficient and effective. So service delivery, I think we're thinking about ways that we can leverage these low-cost tech solutions. And without going too far down another road, we do, though, in light of that, need to be considering equity and access for the people that are hardest to serve. Tech platforms are great, but they're not the answer if we're not reaching the people that we serve. So I think to some, what's not going to change, and let's double down in our investments on those things. And the things that will change, we have to make sure that we're reaching the populations with equity and access that need serving. So that's sort of our perspective and some of the conversations we've had in the last couple of months.
I think that's incredibly valuable perspective, because, what I was hearing you say is what we do really is the same, but how we get there is changing, needs to change. So as we embark on this partnership together, and are rethinking kind of the operational strategy to accomplish the what are some of where are we headed together with this journey?
Yeah, so I think, so locally, we know that having access to American job centers in Pennsylvania, it's referred to as the PA Career Link system, it's important for us to have that that access point or access points in all of our counties across our region. And I think the idea of bricks and mortar is going to be reimagined. I mean, it's being reimagined across the board. I mean, commercial real estate is probably not a business that I would want to be in right now, in light of more working from home, and in the future, people being maybe a little bit less likely to meet as big groups. So bricks and mortar, we have to figure out the right mix. There still will be bricks and mortar, and we'll still do the face-to-face appointments with job seekers and businesses, but we'll do it more strategic and thoughtful ways. I think the idea of having one place where we could have career advising, case management, evaluation, eligibility, and intake all kind of housed in one place, and being able to use a lot of these different platforms that are cheap or very low cost to reach job seekers across the region is one of the most compelling things, because with a labor force of 750,000, we are only reaching, honestly, a relatively small percentage. If we serve 25,000 people a year, that's wonderful. But how many people are not able to access the PA career link system because they're working? And one of the biggest ways I think that strategy will then be operationalized into innovative programming will be there's an acronym that we've been using a lot that we borrowed from the United Way. And Deb, you're probably familiar with it. It's the ALICE population, and that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. So ALICE. So that's the working poor. And we haven't done a great job as the workforce system at really reaching the working poor, partly because they're working. But I think there's a real good opportunity for us to use these tech platforms to reach that working poor population that really needs the services of the public workforce system. So that's what I get excited about, that it's not just a new app or platform, but rather we can actually operationalize that into better programming.
So let's talk about what you're doing right now to rethink services during this pandemic. What's your region been doing and doing now?
So we're really kind of breaking this up into a couple different strategic buckets. The first is, we've been, over the past couple of years, even before all of the last 3 months with the pandemic, is building community access points. And think libraries are a really good example of that. And it's not exclusive to libraries at all, but a library is a sort of a touch point, an access point for people in that community to have a familiar place where they can be able to access information, resources, and be able to sort of log in to the PA career link system. So really using and leveraging those relationships and those community access points so what's the next step is, let's do a face-to-face go-to meeting or Skype or Zoom to be able to talk face-to-face with one of our career advisors. So that's something that we've been working on for a while that I think is really important for us to leverage right now. In addition, really moving a lot of our standard orientation or informational resources and putting it online. There's no reason that someone necessarily needs to walk into a PA career link to get an orientation about how the public workforce system works. So we've been moving a lot of that to online services such as YouTube, right? Something that's very simple that anyone can access anywhere. So I think it's really kind of a combination of, where do people go when they do want to go somewhere and they need access, those community access points, and then how much can we just start pushing online for people to be able to access it that way? So that's kind of the two ways that we're thinking about. But again, in terms of what won't change, excellent customer service won't go out of fashion. Engagement with local businesses is not going away. So we need to find the right ways to do that in both cases.
So let's talk about local businesses. I know that you work very closely with economic development. So share a little bit about some of the great work you're doing there with economic development and supporting local business.
Yeah, so so when I started, and I have to say my predecessors were very much on the same page too. So to some degree, it was picking up the work that was already started, was in a sense viewing workforce development as an arm of economic development, and vice versa, looking at economic development and workforce development is really being coexisting in a very similar space. When a business is thinking about moving to any location, let's use South Central Pennsylvania as an example, there's the attraction, retention, and expansion sort of viewpoint of economic development. So the attraction is, why do we want to move here? Why do we want to stay here? And how are we going to expand now that we're here? And across the whole Commonwealth, the number one challenge and the number one issue for businesses is workforce, finding and retaining a skilled workforce. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we approached the economic development entities in our region, and it's a sort of a coalition of EDCs across all 8 counties. And that group, known as the Partners for Regional Economic Performance, known as PREP. So the PREP group, we approached and said, we need to do a much better job, not just at feeding you information, but really building programs that are integrated. So we've built this network on our team and on the PREP side that are basically jointly funded and are jointly held accountable, both to workforce and economic development in terms of their work plan. So what's really cool about this is that we now have both economic and workforce development have an investment. They have some skin in the game for our staff. And the staff reports directly to both entities. What's nice about that is if PREP says, hey, this is going to be a question for a business that's thinking about moving here, the workforce board can crunch the data, get the numbers, send all the information over to bring that business in. Once that business is looking to expand, we can approach them and say, how about we build a training program for you that will help train 75 of your workers for that next industry recognized credential along their career pathway. So the integration really has been money and joint work plans between workforce and economic development. And it's been great for the region. And I think I can speak for economic development in saying it's been a partnership that has been a long time coming, and it's been really fruitful.
Great. And you mentioned about some of the challenges in your region. I believe your part of the country, your region is struggling with an aging population. Is it correct? Yeah, so let's talk about some of the things that you're doing to combat that.
Yeah, so it's related to the economic development partnership. We've seen that one of the most effective strategies for our chambers of commerce and our economic development agencies is how do we bring young people into Harrisburg? And so there's been a number of different marketing campaigns and publications and strategies to be able to bring folks in that are, mid-professionals, young professionals. So I think one of the challenges that we are going to face as a whole Commonwealth is that it's an aging state, and the population has been either flat or slightly declining. And it is, though, really kind of a tale of 2 Pennsylvanias. And I'm sure my colleagues from across the Commonwealth would maybe push back a little bit on this, but Philly, Pittsburgh, and the South Central Pennsylvania region are growing, and they've been drivers of economic growth across the Commonwealth. But the rest of the state, I think we're seeing a lot of folks leaving there and coming to those 3 regions that I just mentioned. So it's a little bit of an interesting and complex issue, because we don't want to pull from one part of Pennsylvania and sort of take away from the great work that's going on up there. However, we need to make sure that we have education programs, the work-life balance, the ability to bring young people and young professionals into our area and keep them here. And that's not just going to be salary. And I think we all know that. Money is a part of it, but it's only a small part in terms of the holistic view about why you'd want to move your family here. So that's a big challenge for us in South Central PA for sure.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but share a little bit about the Navigator function that you have in your system that you brought in, I think primarily to deal with the current situation, right? That investment. Can you share a little bit about that? I know it's very operational, practical level stuff, but I think people would find that useful.
Yeah, so the Navigator role is exactly that. It's really being a liaison between the 2 systems. And Deb, as you know, a lot of the work that we're in is not necessarily coming up with a new solution so much as it is connecting the dots between the answers that are already out there. So the Navigator really is a funded position to do just that, acting as a liaison between workforce and economic development vis-a-vis planning, grant writing and grant making, but also developing the right strategies that says, all right, so what Lebanon County and Franklin County are doing are two different campaigns, but truly we're all part of the same region. So what alignment and what sort of economies of scale can we get by doing this more collectively as a region? So it's really a funded position through the workforce board to say, we've got to do a better job at connecting the dots between workforce and economic development. So again, that's something that we've seen a lot of success in. And if we had if we had limitless funding, we would probably hire 3 more of them to be able to further that work. So.
Great. So you also are really involved nationally. You participate in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Love to get your perspective, Jesse, on where you see workforce development going as an industry over the next 5 years.
Yeah, so this is good, I'm sure this is being recorded, so you can always bring this back up in 5 years to show me how wrong I was. But I think yep. So I think a couple things. Number one is the pandemic has shifted the service delivery. So I do not see us going back to an exclusively bricks and mortar service delivery. I think we could all agree that it will either be moving to remote or online or some sort of hybrid. And I think hybrid makes a lot of sense. So that's number one. Number two is we think about as wild as this is, the reauthorization of WIOA is going to be on a periphery here coming up pretty soon. I think the question is, how do we better blend and braid federal funding? So something that we've been working on a lot here is when someone comes into our door, instead of trying to funnel them into a bucket of funding, WIOA or TANF or whatever, is how do we do a better job at leveraging and blending and braiding those funding streams? And so I think for me, if I had one request to Congress in reauthorizing is help us to have more flexibility in using federal funds, because I think we can do more locally if we do that. I know that's a difficult ask, but that would be one of them. And then in addition, I think we're going to see higher education and workforce development boards doing more work together. Now, in our region, the past 5 or 10 years, we haven't done a ton as a workforce board in higher education, in many cases because the people that we're serving are probably a few steps away from getting to higher education. But in the last 6 months to 18 months, we've seen so much more work going on because higher education realizes we need to take the big, bulky 4-year degree and potentially crunch it down to 2-year degrees or 18-month certificates. So we've been doing a lot more with higher education and expect that workforce boards should and could be doing more with higher education, particularly with business input. If businesses say, college, university in your town, we need this program and you're best equipped to do that, workforce boards are a great convener to make that happen.
Terrific. So I happened to have dug in your past a little bit and saw that you were published years ago on, you did a research paper on the GED test and test preparation, and in your bio says you're still involved with the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. I'd love you to just share a little bit about your passion there and how the workforce system can do more to really work together with that system.
Yeah, it really is near and dear to my heart. The Coalition for Adult Basic Education is a national association that represents adult educators and literacy councils across the country. And truly, we've seen that, boy, the numbers are staggering. When someone who has very, very low literacy levels, it is the rate of the poverty level for somebody who has a low literacy rate is something like 8 or 10 times higher than someone who has sort of at grade level literacy. So it's not the silver bullet, but I tell you what, investments in adult education are going to help the workforce system and vice versa. So the passion that I have with that is we can talk all day about career pathways and we can talk all day about industry recognized credentials, but when we do not help our postgraduate population getting to some pretty standard levels of literacy, then GED is a perfect example of that. Then we're really doing them a disservice because we're talking about career pathways, but we haven't equipped them to really be able to be successful in their current role and invest in them from that adult education perspective. The research that's now, boy, and you probably would know better than I would, it's probably 10 or 12 years old, was looking at, does the ease of the GED sort of incentivize some people to say, I'm done with education. I just want to get out and get my GED, because GED is being pushed as the silver bullet. Once I get that, it's as good as a high school diploma. So really kind of looking at that tension between the value of it, but also we don't want to have people exiting the education system before they're ready. So there's an interesting tension there that I think we've still yet to ferret out in the workforce boards. But yeah, adult education's a near and dear to my heart for sure.
Great. Well, these times really are challenging times and also bring tons of innovation. So I'm curious, Jesse, and speaking in terms of your role and the responsibility that you have in the region, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah. Well, besides 3 kids and 2 of them under 2.5 years old, that keeps me up at night sometimes. But besides that, I think for us, it's so I think about when we're able to place somebody in work, and this idea that we've done the best job that we can to prepare that individual for a career. We draw a big distinction between a job and a career at our workforce board, and I'm sure we're not alone in that. I think that's the biggest thing, is sometimes if there's this, to be very candid, sometimes a feeling of helplessness where you place somebody in a job because that's the best option that they have. And then you think, have we given them opportunities to be successful across the rest of their lifetime? This idea of lifelong learning. We need investments from private sector, from higher ed, from workforce boards, from economic development to help incentivize that someone gets a job, but that's not the end of their learning. We need to do a much better job about that. So what keeps me up at night is this job career tension, and really driving our region and our organization as much to preparing people to careers as possible. And I think when I look down the road and I think about my own kids who are still 15 years away from entering the labor force, or more in some cases, I think the other thing is how rapidly things are changing. There's just no way for us to predict what 5 or 10 years down the road looks like, let alone 15 or 20 years. So then it's identifying, what do we think won't change? Going back to our first part of our conversation, what learning and what education do we think will best position people for success in the labor market 5 or 10 years down the road? And you probably know what some of those are. I mean, STEM is a great example of in demand and growth skill sets that I think we need to do a much better job at investing in. So those are a couple of things that I think about: the changing labor force, and are we doing enough to connect people to careers, not just jobs?
Well, I imagine you're not alone out there. I think all of us worry about those things too. Jesse, as we wrap up, I don't know, you're doing some great work at your region. I love the energy of you and your team. So I don't know, what would you like the headline to be for South Central PA, for your organization, say in 12 months, 18 months? What would you like that headline to read?
Yeah, I think this is probably too long for a headline, but something to the effect of not just one organization, but the whole workforce system gets a lot of attention because we've done a really good job at being nimble and adaptive to a changing labor force and labor market dynamics, but also in a post-pandemic world, that we've reached more people in meaningful and valuable ways, and more people know that it's not just one organization, but a whole network of workforce development agencies that they can tap into. And that's really what drives our work. Is if South Central PA Works never gets any attention ever again, but the region and the whole system gets attention for being a valuable entity, I think then we've been successful. So if we've been able to navigate that in 12 or 18 months, particularly in this pandemic world, I think we've done our job pretty well. So
I think so too. That's great. Jesse McCree, thank you for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be your provider in South Central PA. And I look forward to seeing more of you. Have a great day. Keep up the terrific work and the passion for this work.
Thank you so
much.
Talk to you later. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to our partnership as well. So thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a good forum.
Thank you.
You too.